You're listening to KZSC's Voces, Críticas, Critical Voices. I am your producer and host, Silvana Falcón. Today I'm here with MariaElena De La Garza and Paulina Moreno of the Community Action Board of Santa Cruz County, also known as CAB. MariaElena De La Garza has over 27 years of experience in nonprofit work and is currently the executive director of the Community Action Board. She holds a dual Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology and Chicano studies from Scripps College in Claremont, California, and she has had extensive leadership development and training experience, including Bank of America National Leadership Program, the United Way Leadership for Community Transformation, and she was recently selected to participate in the Stanford University Nonprofit Management Institute by the Packard Foundation. Most recently, MariaElena was a recipient of the UC Santa Cruz's Tony Hill Award in 2018 for her work as a community leader. She was born and raised in Watsonville and still lives in her childhood neighborhood with her family today. Paulina Moreno is the project director of the Thriving Immigrants Initiative, a new South County project from the Community Action Board, and she's responsible for coordinating legal services, policy advocacy, education and outreach, and other essential services to the immigrant community. She was the DACA Services Coordinator, DACA being the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, for CAB, where she supervised and coordinated services to clients seeking information and assistance related to DACA and other immigrant relief benefits. Paulina has a master's in policy organization and leadership studies from Stanford University and an MA in education from UC Santa Cruz. In November 2016, the Community Assessment Project recognized Paulina as a local community hero for her advocacy and dedication to improving the quality of life of immigrant youth and families in Santa Cruz County. I've invited them to talk about the work of CAB, about what they see as challenges facing immigrant families and students in our county, and about this new Thriving Immigrants Initiative. Welcome, MariaElena and Paulina, to KZSC's Voces Críticas.
Yes, thank you, Silvana, for having us.
MariaElena, let's start with you.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about who CAB is and the work that you do and the mission.
So the Community Action Board of Santa Cruz County has existed for 53 years. It was born in 1965 out of the war on poverty. So President Johnson at that time, and this is the community action story, was getting pressure from Martin Luther King around the Poor People's Movement. And community action was born out of those conversations around the thoughts that the United States needed to do something to help support the people who were impacted by poverty in this country. And so the community action story says that this is the reason why Martin Luther King got assassinated, because he was organizing poor people. And the community action story was born out of that movement. What makes us different than other nonprofits in the community was because we were born from a federal movement and we're required to do two different things that make us different. Number one, we have a federal mandate that requires us to have low-income voices on our board. So we have a component of 5 low-income representatives who are impacted by poverty, whose families have been impacted by poverty, who live in communities impacted by poverty on our board. We also have a component of elected officials and or their appointees. And so imagine what happens in the boardroom. We have low-income voices talking about the realities of what it means to be impacted by poverty and living in this time with the people who are policymakers and decision makers around that same table. It is a powerful force in this community. It's what makes community action strong. The other mandate that we have that makes us different is every 2 years we're required to go out into the community and have a conversation on what poverty looks like. And that keeps us relevant. It keeps us connected. It keeps us understanding emerging needs, and it keeps us responsive to those needs in the community. And so it's so important. Every single service that Community Action has had in its history here in Santa Cruz County was born out of a need that was identified by the community members themselves.
What's so incredible about that model is that you actually have the community taking the initiative. All of that has been from the origins, from the beginning. CAB has been set up like that.
Absolutely. And it's really important to highlight that, especially in these times right now, what our agency's commitment is to do that type of work. I share with staff and with the folks that I work with that we sit in the middle and create a bridge between systems folks and grassroots folks. And that's our unique place in the community. So our mission is to eliminate poverty and create social change. And that position of being that bridge helps move our mission forward.
And Paulina, you're now leading this new initiative through CAB called the Thriving Immigrants Initiative in South County. So tell us about this initiative and how people can learn more about what you're doing there.
So the Thriving Immigrants Initiative was born as a response really to the new administration and the various attacks that we've seen happen in our community. This is an initiative funded through the Lucille Packard Foundation. The Packard Foundation brought a group of us together to have a conversation about immigration. And what we appreciate about the Packard Foundation is them allowing us to really be focused on the needs of our community and be responsive in that way. In this collaborative, we have service providers from various different realms. We have folks who are part of the healthcare system. We have Salud para la Gente, we have Catholic Charities, we have Community Ventures, we have Watsonville Law Center. The Immigration Project, that's one of the programs through CAB, is also part of as a partner, and PBPSA, the YWCA. So we're all really coming together to talk about immigration and the response that we need to create that really is looking at immigration, I think, in a way that it's intersectional, because we understand that immigration, it is not just about legal services. Immigration, it impacts their ability to obtain a job, to go to school, to obtain healthcare services. So we're trying to look at it and approach the work how immigration impacts a family holistically.
Can I share a story?
Absolutely.
As we were beginning these conversations over a year ago, the needs of families impacted really came to light. And if I can share the story, in my role as the executive director, I get to sign check requests and sign checks, right? So I get a check request and it's to provide support to someone to pay their PG&E bill. You know, it's $70, $80, más o menos. I don't remember the exact amount, but I sign the request and the request leaves my office and goes to the fiscal department where they process the check. While that's happening, I walk down the hall to talk to one of our managers, and in the room where she's sitting, there's two young people, one about 19 and one about 17. And I could see there's an interaction going on, and the director says to the young people, "This is MariaElena, our executive director. Can I share your story?" And young people said, "Yeah." And so they introduce me, and they tell me that their father was removed, that ICE, had shown up, and that the father was removed, and the mother had gone. Somehow the mother had left to support the father. He was deported. And the oldest daughter was 19, and she was there looking for resources and actually was looking for help because she needed someone to help her write her resume, because she needed to look for work. And as I'm having this conversation, I notice that there's a staff person with an envelope and a check in it. And he hands it to the young lady, and she looks at him, opens up the envelope, and pulls out the check for the public utility support. And I watch him interact with her, and she's looking at him, and he says to her, "You ripped out the check, you put it in the envelope, you make sure that the address is peeking through the envelope window, and you put your return address here." I share this story as I shared it with the Packard Foundation and our partners because what I realized, it was a real moment to understand. This young lady was staying behind to take care of her younger siblings, and she had never had the opportunity to learn how to pay a bill because her parents took care of it. And here she was, 19 years old, deciding to take on being the head of household, trying to find help and support, and needing to be mentored in that very basic level. I still get chills thinking about that story. Because what that is a reminder for us and this community is that people and families are being separated locally, and people are staying behind, and people need support. And so that story was the beginning of Thriving Immigrants Initiative. The other part of that is, where did Thriving Immigrants come from? We were at a city council meeting in Watsonville, and they were voting on becoming a sanctuary city. And that is a very important piece of work that our communities need to do. However, it's not the end all. And so for us, we came to the podium and said, "Thank you for supporting Sanctuary City, and pull us together and let's talk about what we can do to help immigrants thrive in our community. Pull us together and let us create a strategy or think about what is it that our families need." And that's where Thriving Immigrants was born.
That's an incredible story to share, and thank you so much for sharing that. I love the word thriving because I think that speaks to the potential of what a community can become. And we know people are capable of much more when they have the support in place.
Absolutely. And when systems understand that we have to do business in a different way in order to meet those needs and fill those gaps.
Paulina, if you could talk about the DACA work that you've done. I know you've done that quite a bit, and this program is sort of in this very precarious limbo type status. How are the DACA students you've worked with? Where are they now? What's happening with them? How are they making sense of this very peculiar time in their lives?
Thank you for asking that, Silvana, because I think oftentimes it's a forgotten population because of everything else that is happening. However, these are students, these are families, these are young adults that are living on a day-to-day because things are constantly changing at the federal level, or we're not getting clear direction. Some of the students that we've had the privilege of working with in the past, we know, for example, that because a result of obtaining deferred action, they were able to not only get their Social Security number, which then allowed them to get a job, but are sometimes being the sole providers of their families. I actually have a couple of students, just like the young lady that MariaElena just described, as having to take the responsibility of really being the head household in their family. I have other students that are at the university and that we're having to work with. And in a way, they've actually come back and are supporting the work at the Immigration Project by helping other students apply for deferred action, which is great. We want to make sure that people who have the ability to renew can do so in a timely manner. Currently, I do want to say that at the Immigration Project, we have some funding from the state of California to support these young people in paying for their $495 fee, which I don't know if you saw an article just recently in the news speaking on the difficulties that some of these young individuals have to pay and renew for their DACA. So we want to make sure that people understand that there are resources in the community and we're constantly advocating to bring in additional resources. But we also understand that this is, again, not the end all. There is a need for advocacy to have some systemic change because DACA, unfortunately, can be taken away at any time. And this means people losing their ability to work, to go to school, to thrive, really. And so we understand that this is only just the beginning.
And so for DACA right now, you can do a renewal, but you cannot be a new applicant. Is that correct?
Correct. We do encourage people to come to the Immigration Project and get a consultation. Our team is really equipped to ask the right questions, to figure things out, to make an assessment. Sometimes folks are eligible for certain things that they may not even know about. So that is why we highly encourage people to come and ask. If it's just a simple question, it doesn't matter. Come and ask.
You're listening to Paulina Moreno, Project Director of the Thriving Immigrants Initiative, a new South County project from the Community Action Board, and MariaElena De La Garza, Executive Director of the Community Action Board of Santa Cruz County. MariaElena, long time, Watsonville, born, raised, living there now. You have seen this community undergo so many changes. Could you talk about what you think some of the most urgent issues or pressing issues that are facing Watsonville now?
So let me start off by saying I love Santa Cruz County and I love Watsonville. It is home. It is my neighborhood. It is my community. And I am here because I feel a responsibility to help support the work and the community and the folks that I represent. Watsonville has changed a lot and has grown a lot. And there's wonderful things happening in Watsonville. And the commitment of the city leadership is to continue to help support our city thrive. I can tell you that Community Action Board and our board of directors just underwent a process, Silvana, to talk about what is the portrait of poverty. What does it look like right now? We devised a process and a plan to do it in a different way, and we spoke to various people from the community. We spoke to a group, for example, of LGBTQ+ Spanish speakers from South County. We spoke to that same community of English speakers in North County, and so we wanted to see how poverty was showing up. So we learned that people feel stuck in low-wage work and that there aren't pathways to move them through those systems. We understand and we heard that people needed higher wages and needed consistent employment. We know our farm workers live on about $12,000 to $15,000 a year, and that's seasonal. So understanding that what we heard were the area and needs around employment. We, of course, heard about rent burden, housing insecurity, high-density living, quality of homes and shelter. We heard that there was barriers to accessing services, that people didn't have childcare or transportation. There was no bus lines to certain places. They didn't know how to navigate the system. We also heard about health. People were concerned about health, physical health, mental health, and substance abuse. issues and not knowing where and how to access the resources to help those families dealing with those issues. And lastly, what came up in this round of public conversations is the issue of discrimination, prejudice, stereotypes, and racial inequalities. And that last piece had not made our plan for a few years for CAB. So it has risen to the top, I believe, is in response to the political landscape.
So let's talk a little bit more about the ICE raids. What are you hearing from families about the terror, Paulina?
So we, in partnership as part of the Thriving Immigrants Initiative, is really an opportunity to work in alignment with some of the grassroots organizations that have risen as a result of when we had the ICE raids back in February of 2017. And so we are part of the dispatchers that are answering the red cards that the community has been receiving and has access to, thanks to different organizations such as Sanctuary Santa Cruz, the Pajaro Valley Rapid Response, the Your Allied Rapid Response. We are now partnering with them to really be the ones providing and helping to assist with not only the legal representation, but also connecting them to other resources such as the social-emotional. We know that fear is a big factor that is really paralyzing families, that is really impacting their ability to show up to school, to show up just to work, or to even leave their house, Silvana. There's been instances where we've had to go directly to a person's house because they've been so afraid of just leaving their house to get food. These are the realities, I think, that folks are feeling in the community, and that at any moment, I think they don't necessarily know who to connect with. And so there's been a big challenge both of getting the information out and also our work in wanting to collaborate with ag and wanting to collaborate with employers and wanting to collaborate with schools so that we can ensure that families are getting this information throughout the county and not just from one organization. I won't share any specific details, but once again, we just had someone get picked up on Thursday of last week from Capitola. I'm not even sure if it's correct for us to use this term raids because we're not seeing these big, what we've heard about, for example, in Los Angeles or in Kansas. What we're seeing is that folks are being specifically targeted. Sometimes ICE is showing up very early in the morning when people are getting ready to go to school or go to work, get their kids ready. And there's been a lot of concern in the community about ICE using their vests that say police. And we're having this discussion with our local police officers because that is getting conflated and people are now even afraid of turning to their local law enforcement when they need to. And so just this Thursday, we had an incident of a young gentleman being taken from Capitola. We're trying to work with the family at the moment to provide the support, the social emotional support, because kids were there when this happened. You know, the mother was there, his partner, and this is something that's very traumatizing for the children. We know from our connection to different rapid response networks that this is happening throughout California. It's almost like we're not seeing enough of it. And of course, we don't want to, but we're worried that something big is coming because of how silent it's almost been. And at the same time, we didn't get the call from the family until Sunday. So another concern is families are oftentimes taking about 2 to 3 days to contact us for any assistance. And so at that point, it gets very difficult because people are taken to San Francisco to get processed. But then after San Francisco, they're transferred to other detention centers that may be very far for us to get to. Just yesterday, we had a meeting with some of our partners and we had the legal attorneys there telling us that now people are being strategically transferred out of the county. And what we don't want to see is people getting transferred out of the state, which will be a lot more difficult for us to advocate for.
So all of this work is, I imagine, very taxing to do day in and day out. And I wonder if we could start with you, MariaElena. What keeps you going?
That's a really good question. After the elections, there was this sense of hopelessness. And so for me, I look for those rays of light, those tiny little rays of light, like meeting those young people. They made it through our doors. They knew where to go look for help, and we were able to help them. And at that point, it was helping them pay a PG&E bill. And that, to me, is hopeful. We were able to be responsive. I was at 7:30 in the morning at a meeting with the city of Watsonville and our partners to talk about homelessness and our response to homelessness and how homelessness is different in South County than it is in North County. And how do we bring our undocumented families into the conversation? Because the needs are different and it looks different. And people were there there at 7:30 in the morning holding that conversation. To me, that's hopeful. That's people being committed to the cause. I'm hopeful when I meet young students from UCSC who want to engage with us to learn more about the community, to be of service in the community, to move forward their research that supports communities of color. That's hopeful. Those are just some of the things. The people who I get to work with, like Paulina and the incredible staff at Community Action Board, our volunteer board of directors, that gives me hope. And honestly, Silvana, my mama said, yo te abrí las puertas. Yo te di educación. Yo trabajé para darte educación. You have to be of service. Ahora te toca a ti dar servicio. That's what it's all about for me.
Yeah, we have a responsibility.
That's
I think
right.
You're absolutely right. And you, Paulina, what keeps you going?
Well, I have one of my biggest mentors sitting right next to me. And so I'm very blessed to be in an organization that I work with amazing people. And I know that when I show up to meetings, people come with their whole heart. They are present. They are there because they want to create change and they want to address all the things that we're trying to impact. That is what keeps me going every single day, is mentors like MariaElena, is having the opportunity to have colleagues and work with some amazing attorneys and people that on a daily basis want to advocate and create change. And I do have to say that I also love working with the students. It's always very empowering and very humble to be in presence of students because they have so much energy and they want to do something. I'm also trying to think about ways that we can create better systems of mentorship, possibly. I'm always excited when I get a group of young Latinas in our doors and we're all of a sudden talking about grad school and we're talking about careers and we're talking about our own stories. And so I think about the need for a Latina mentorship program where we're getting to talk about our stories, but also think about our work professionally and our careers. So those are the types of things that keep me going. And of course, I get to go home every so often. So I was just home last weekend in Coachella. And my family is a constant reminder to me of the sacrifices that they've made for me to be here and my responsibility to give back to my community.
Now, you guys have an event coming up in October, and I want to be sure that people hear about this event and why they should come.
On October 4th at 11:30 a.m. at the Seascape Golf Club in Aptos, we intentionally found a mid-county space. We are celebrating community voices, community engagement, and community action. And it really is our way to gift back to folks what we have learned from the community members that engaged with us in our conversations around poverty. We're teaching, we're sharing, we're giving back, we're celebrating, and we're also honoring some folks. And I want to just let you know that we're honoring the Blum Center. They have done incredible work. They were partners with us in the Community Action Plan process. We know the work that has been done in the low-wage service worker study, the No Place Like Home study, the community action work. We as a nonprofit can't do the work without that type of partnership. And the Blum Center for Poverty Research has elevated our work, has given us more tools, has expanded our footprint, and we're honoring them and saying thank you. Along with the Santa Cruz Community Coalition to Overcome Racism, SCORE has been around for a lot of years. And so they're being honored for their work and their boldness and their courage to talk about racism when it wasn't cool. And thirdly, we're honoring a woman, Helen Timberlake, who is the head of Human Services Department for the county. She's new in her position. She's been with the county for many years, but she's the new lead. And she's coming in with bold, courageous, innovative, out-of-the-box thinking that is elevating all the services to help support the families and the communities impacted by poverty. So we're excited about the celebration. Tickets are still available. You'll find the event on Facebook. Follow us on Facebook. Paulina posts and makes sure that she uses our Facebook page to help communicate the Thriving Immigrants work. It's really important stuff, so I invite folks to like us on Facebook.
And can you remind us the website?
Yes, cabinc.org.
cabinc.org. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. I appreciate having this conversation with you.
Thank you for what you do, and thank you for the space. We really appreciate you giving us the platform. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.